Welcome to the Achievable FINRA and Insurance podcast. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have affordable courses for the FINRA SIE, the Series 6, 7, 9, 63, 65, and 66, and insurance, life and health, property and casualty, and personal lines. We have a 95% or better pass rate across tens of thousands of students for all of our courses. And every achievable course includes what you need to pass the first time, which is a full textbook, videos on key topics, thousands of questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, and full length practice exams. You can try it out for free by going to achievable.me. And if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Brenda Wells joining us to talk insurance careers. And Brenda, I'd love if you could introduce yourself and where you teach.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you for having me on. I am a professor of risk management and insurance at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina, home of the ECU Pirates. I'm the Robert F. Byrd Distinguished Professor of Risk and Insurance, and I'm also the department chair for the Department of Finance and Insurance.
Yeah, that's great. So then you probably are pretty intimately familiar with today's topic, right? Um,
Yes.
we're going to be talking about insurance careers, specifically property and casualty, because obviously it's going to be pretty different depending on which specialization you're in. What would you consider kind of to be the core pieces of doing property and casualty insurance, right? And how it differs from the other insurance areas?
Okay. There's In insurance, we recognize property and casualty insurance, which is auto and homeowners, all types of liability policies, business insurance. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that come under that. The
Mhm,
other side of the industry is life and health,
mhm.
and that is a completely different thing altogether. So I'm glad we're focusing on property casualty today because I think that's where there's a lot of promise for careers.
Yeah. So then, how big is the property and casualty insurance universe?
Yeah, it's real big. I mean, you think about it, just for example, I booked a cruise for vacation this summer. Can you
Mhm.
imagine what the insurance on $1 billion cruise ship costs?
Probably a lot.
I don't know how much,
Right.
but I know it's a lot. And so property casualty insures buildings, skyscrapers,
Mhm.
trailers, every kind of property you can imagine. And we provide casualty insurance, which is another name for liability insurance. And
Mhm.
liability insurance pays for you if you hurt someone else. Like if you're
With
in a
your
wreck
with
and
your
it's,
boat or skyscraper, yeah.
I mean, if I walk into the lobby of your skyscraper and I slip and fall, I'm going to sue you. If you hit me with your boat, I'm going to sue you. If your dog bites me, I'm going to sue you. So everybody needs liability insurance for various reasons. Liability insurance is required by law in every almost every state to drive a car. Like I said earlier, property insurance sometimes comes in a package with property and liability insurance in the same package. That's like your homeowner form.
Mhm.
Homeowners insurance covers the house, the contents, and it provides liability coverage.
Right. Yeah, well, and I mean it's important to mention kind of why this all exists, right? At the end of the day, if you were if you owned a skyscraper, let's say, and then someone slipped and fell in the lobby and sued you, that could potentially enough money that it could put you out of business, right? I mean, like that's kind of an
Mm-hmm.
extreme example, but you get the idea. And so
Yeah.
the idea behind getting insurance is you're basically paying a sort of a fixed monthly rate so that a one-off event doesn't completely destroy you. And so it's really
Yes.
good for the economy in that way and kind of keeping everything going.
Insurance supports the United States economy, it supports the world economy. Now,
Mhm.
it has a bad name for a couple of reasons. One is, think about growing up. Unless your father or mother worked in insurance, you were not taught it, it was not taught in school. And the day you turned 16, your parents had a fit about the new auto insurance premium that you had to
Right.
pay as a driver. You had a fit, especially if they handed you the bill and said, get a job, you pay for it. Because a
Right.
16-year-old male driver is the highest cost of just about any standard driver.
That makes
So
sense.
that to me, that is, I think, the exposure people have to it. And then the TV, the other reason, the TV is flooded with ads from lawyers saying that insurance company is going to screw you over. Come get me. Let
Mhm.
me help you. And while sometimes that needs to happen, I was in a wreck last September. I tried for months to settle with the insurance company and to do so in good faith. And I finally said, no, it's time for a lawyer. And I,
Right.
I didn't get one right off the bat. I tried. They offered me a ridiculously low sum of money and thought that I would go away for that. Well, not after the injuries I sustained. And that is actually a third reason that insurance gets a bad name, because they do things, certain companies, not the good companies, but certain companies do these kinds of things to people who go tell other people. I just told the story here. I had to get a lawyer because they wouldn't make me a fair offer of settlement. The reality is, a lot of people get their claims paid every single day without a lawyer, and they're
Without any
satisfied and they're
drama, right?
treated well. Yeah, without any drama. They're treated well, but when the industry tries not to pay what it owes, I have a real problem with that. And I tell my students when they come to me, hey, I want to apply for a job at this company, I'll tell them my honest opinion of it. I've got no problem giving them my advice and sharing my experience with them.
Yeah. So I think with insurance, I'm curious, like, what are the different career paths that you can have in property and casualty insurance?
Okay, I always talk about this in the scope or in the setting of where does insurance start? Okay, it starts when you go to an agent. So, agent is the most commonly known job.
Mhm.
Now, some companies don't use sales agents the way most of them do. Some of them hire people to talk on the phone and they don't pay them a commission, they pay them by the hour. They're
Mhm.
still agents, they just are structured differently. But a traditional agent in property and casualty is paid on commission, and it varies greatly with your contract with the company. You know what your commission will be. And but the average property casualty, average ballpark number is about 15%. It can
Yeah.
be higher, it can be lower, but 15 is a good round number. So an
And that
agent,
15% is for you facilitating the transaction for the business, right? So you're essentially
yes,
a commissioned sales rep in a way.
you are a commission sales rep, but you're consultative. Because their commissions are smaller than some other lines of business, they have a tendency to be more consultative, as in, okay, this is what you need. Do you have coverage for this? Okay, let's get you coverage for this. The property casualty side of the industry is not high pressure the way some other lines of business tend to operate. So, yeah, you're on commission. But here's the coolest part about property casualty insurance ever: it renews every year. I mean, now there are situations where you have a bad loss or something and they cancel you, but in general, if you're the agent, you don't just get 15% this year, you get it next year and the year after and the year after.
And so it incentivizes a bit more of like a relationship-based approach than maybe other
Yes,
types of insurance.
yes. Also, property casualty agents know they can be sued and held liable if they say recommend the wrong coverage or fail to tell you about a coverage you need. And the law on that varies greatly by state. But
Mhm.
in general, the insurance agent in property and casualty is a professional, like a CPA or a lawyer. And most people I know who have wealth have three people they consider vital to their success: their CPA,
Mhm.
their lawyer, and their property and casualty insurance agent.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
agent is the first contact you have when you buy a policy. Now, what you do is you apply for insurance, and your application is sent off to the company, and the company decides whether to cover you or not. And a lot of that underwriting, and I'm going to get to underwriter in just a minute, a lot of that process of deciding who to cover and who not to cover is done by computer algorithm. There's not usually an individual sitting there going, yes, we want to cover you, you have a great driving record, or no, we don't want to cover you, you've had 3 DUIs or something like that. So most of that is done, or a lot of it is done by computer. But
Mhm.
where an underwriter really comes in is in commercial lines. And what does an underwriter do? An underwriter decides whether or not to do business with you. So when you apply for insurance, the underwriter takes your application and says, yeah, we're going to cover this. We want to insure this boat, this plane, whatever. Or, no, we don't.
Mhm.
Or they might say, okay, if you will implement loss control measures, like let's say you hire a security guard, then we'll cover you. So an underwriter makes or breaks the business deal between the customer and the agent. The underwriter in commercial lines does it usually. It's a real job. It hasn't been displaced by a computer because there's too much judgment that has to be exercised. Also, just to note, in high risk properties like beach houses, stuff like that, that
Mhm.
underwriting is usually done by an individual who
Mhm.
looks at the risk and says, yes, we can do this, no, we can't. Underwriters vary greatly in how they do their job, where they do their job. But I would say if you were wanting to be an underwriter, commercial lines or high risk personal lines would be the way I would go. Okay. And that is the job that most of my students choose. That's where they want to be, is in underwriting. Now, each year your policy renews, you go back through underwriting and they look, did you have any claims? Have you gone so many years without a claim? Good for you. Here's a discount. Or, oh, look, you got a DUI. So we're going to raise your rates. And again, most of that is automated, but it still happens that at renewal, the underwriter or the computer says, yeah, we're going to renew, or we're going to renew at a higher price, or we're going to renew at a lower price. I mean, the price could go down. The underwriter controls the flow of business into the insurance company,
Mhm.
and it can be very exciting. If you underwrite cruise ships or airplanes or cyber liability, you know, If a cyber attack, it can cost a company hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's part of property casualty insurance. Now, so underwriter is a great place to start. And then let's say you have a claim, you have a loss.
Mhm.
You go to the claims adjuster and you say, okay, here's proof of my loss, here's the fire marshal's report, or here's whatever it is you have to show them. And the claims adjuster looks to see that the policy you have covers the loss that you're claiming. So you got to be really good at reading contracts and interpreting contracts. You've also got to be, and this is not a bad thing, I don't mean it as a bad thing, but you've also, as a claims adjuster, you're carrying the company checkbook. You have so much draft authority, and that means how much you can pay out without getting management approval. You know,
Mhm.
a new claims adjuster might have $2,500 draft authority. A seasoned claims adjuster might have 10 million. I mean,
Mhm.
it just varies with the position and the company and all that. Honestly, though, a $10 million loss is going to have to be approved by several people. But the part about claims that I just think people need to know is you've got to be willing to accept the fact that people lie.
Yeah.
And that's hard for some people to accept. They want to take people at their word. And who better to lie to than your insurance company? That's how a lot of people feel. I don't feel that way. But, there are people out there who, oh, it's an insurance company. Well, I don't like them. I'm going to lie. I'm going to jack up my claim. And what people don't understand is that's a crime. That is punishable by jail time in most states.
Yeah. People still do it though. I mean, people, or it's just,
Yeah.
who's at fault in an auto accident, something that small.
Yeah. It's sad. I had a, every insurance company has a high level claims adjustment team called an SIU, a special investigative unit. And
Mhm.
if you've got the personality of a detective and you like to solve puzzles and problems and stuff, claims adjuster's a great job because
Mhm.
you've got to put together what happened and make sure the evidence matches with the claimant's version of the claim. It's a great job for people that like to solve mysteries, I guess. This lady that headed up an SIU for a major national carrier, one of the top 10 largest carriers in the country, told me, told my class one time, she said, I'm in the SIU, which means I have to try to find a reason to pay. We do not look for reasons not to pay. It takes a special personality to be in claims, and I would tell you and the listeners, if you are working in claims or going into claims with a company that tries to not pay, you need another job because the good companies, they pay and they will pay fairly.
Mhm.
But if you work for a company where they just try to get away with anything and everything, not only should you get out of that for your own career reputation, if you live next to a dumpster long enough, you get used to the smell. And it's the same thing. If you work for a company that encourages you to do unethical things, after a while, they won't seem unethical anymore. You'll get used
Right.
to the smell.
I'd love to switch gears here and talk about other specialties that maybe are a little bit outside of just the sales and adjuster roles. For instance, there's working in like catastrophe modeling or things like that, or there's also working for regulatory bodies. Um,
Yeah.
are those common careers, and kind of what do you think about pursuing those kind of pathways?
Modeling, I don't know how you break into it. You've got to be able to learn the tools and the probabilities and all those things. Working for a regulatory agency is certainly an option. Today, every state has effectively an insurance commissioner, and their office controls the business done in that state.
Hmm.
There are lots of cool jobs in state regulation. There's auditing, they even have law enforcement jobs in the regulatory body because they have to have investigators to go out and catch fraud.
You need someone to enforce the rules, or else those bad insurance companies wouldn't pay out anything.
Exactly. And what they did so poorly in the 17 and early mid 1800s is you'd have a company that would insure everybody only in New York City. And then the Great Fire of New York happened, and that put some companies out of business. And so, one of the things that we learned from that is, of course, you need to spread your risk. You don't want to insure all the coastal properties in Florida. You don't want to insure every city block in New York. You want to insure some of both. And you
Right.
also want to insure some things that are very unlikely to have losses. And that goes back to the underwriter. The, the
Hmm.
CEO and the chief underwriting officer decide what underwriting policy is going to be. Are we going to only underwrite homes that have $1 million or more in value? Are we going to specialize in mobile homes on the beach? You can have any type of underwriting prowess you want to have. You've just got to make sure it's profitable. And so, not every company is looking for the perfect risk. Some of them specialize in high risk exposures, as we call them. And the, the regulator plays a very important role in making sure that the industry fulfills its obligations and also making sure that consumers are not committing fraud.
I'm curious, kind of, what are the different career paths that lead to an insurance career, right? Like there are, I think there are quite a few people that just go get a job, and particularly on the sales side, and kind of have to learn the role on the fly while they're working there. But then I think there are others like that know ahead of time that they're interested in this and they actually go to school for it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Some students come to us saying, I want to major in insurance. I want to major in, we call it RMI, risk management and insurance. And so there will be students that come in freshman year and go, I want to major in RMI. That's what I'm doing. Or ordinarily, they have a family member in RMI and they've seen the potential because, and we'll come back to it, but one thing that people have to realize is the money is very good in these positions. Most of my former students make well over 100 grand a year by now. And the
Wow.
ones that don't, some of them are fresh out of school. Some of them made decisions, for instance, not being mobile is one thing that really hinders careers. But
When you say that, do you
anyway,
mean like a job where they're traveling all the time versus not, or do you mean just not being willing to move to an office in a different state?
not being willing to move an office
Yeah,
because your mega companies, the big carriers, they have offices all over the country.
right.
And if they pick you for a position and you turn it down, you do that too many times and they won't pick you anymore. I just recommend to everybody be mobile.
Mhm.
If you're looking for a job, be mobile. Well, I want to live in eastern North Carolina. Well, great. Go live in Texas or New York or Virginia, somewhere for a year or two, and then come back. Because, I mean, I speak from experience. I was a homegrown country bumpkin fresh off the farm, and nobody in my family really left home. And I went to Texas when I got out of graduate school, and it was hard, but I grew up in the process.
Hmm.
So I'm a big believer that mobility is important. Now, sometimes you just can't, that your spouse has a job that's not mobile or something like that. But this idea that you're going to live in the city you grew up in the northeast quadrant, and that's I just think it's better to be mobile. I think it's better to go out and grow up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also important to understand that that's going to limit your career earnings if you're not willing to do that, right?
It's
And
gonna, and
I,
that's true in any career.
yeah, for sure. But I think it's particularly true in insurance because, like you said, it varies so much state by state. A company with offices everywhere might be looking to deploy people in certain states or things like that, which is not as common for other things. But it's a really interesting tidbit. That's good to know. If you're looking at an insurance career, what are the reasons, kind of, what are the advantages of it, right? I mean, you mentioned the
Hmm.
salaries are really good. I think that's a big one. What
That's a
are the
big one.
other things that you think are important advantages?
The biggest one I see is your job is ultimately about helping other people and supporting the economy.
Mhm.
That's how, what I firmly believe is, if you're underwriting 18 wheelers on the highway
Mhm.
and screening them and deciding what risk category they are, you're making the roads safer for me because those trucks have insurance. I,
Right.
I don't, I, and the claims, especially in what we call CAT claims or catastrophe claims, these people get deployed to disaster sites. Like when there's
Mhm.
a hurricane, the normal load for a claims adjuster is a full time job. Once a hurricane comes in and damages a bunch of stuff, they need more reinforcements.
Mhm.
And you go, you're there, you're writing checks, you're helping people get their lives back together. And I think that's a really noble way to help people. So you're helping people, the money's good. Also, the advancement opportunities are good because a lot of the times people in different generations have different views about this, but some
Mhm.
people like to job hop.
Mhm.
And a lot of companies are rewarding people for longevity now. Hey,
Right.
you get a $25,000 bonus if you stay 5 years or something like that. I mean, I've seen those arrangements before. Again, you're reinforcing the economy. If we couldn't buy homeowners insurance, there would be no mortgages.
Mhm.
No bank would lend money on a house that could not be insured.
Mhm.
Same thing with car loans. Nobody would lend you money on a car if you didn't have car insurance. So
Mhm.
it is tied into the economy. A lot of people go, "Ew, insurance." No, don't hold off there. Don't do that, because there are some very important, very noble and honorable jobs in this industry that I've got students working in, and they've been in for years, and they're making good money.
Yeah, a lot of good reasons to do it. And my final question and my thoughts today is, who is the insurance industry for? If what are the skills that people have, like the soft skills that you think align well with the industry, or what are the types of personalities or people that align well with the industry and who should consider it?
Okay, I'll give you the textbook answer, and then I'll give you my answer. The textbook answer is somebody who wants to help people. It is a people and a relationship business. And as big as it is, it's very small. People know
Mhm.
each other, and it's very tight knit. I mean, when I go to conferences that the industry hosts, I give out and accept so many hugs from all the people that I've met over the years. It's a great business. And again, you are reinforcing and supporting the United States economy, the world economy. So I think that's important. Skills you need textbook wise: good listening, because you got to listen to find out what the risk is or find out what the claim is. Or if you're an
Mhm.
agent, find out what your insured, what your customer needs. Good listening
Mhm.
skills, attention to detail, because you make a mistake and it could cost millions.
Mhm.
So you've got to be vigilant about being detail oriented. Now I'm going to give you my answer. There's two things I tell people when I go out to recruit new majors. I tell them there's two things you got to have to be successful in insurance. Number
Mhm.
one is a strong work ethic. The insurance business is lean, it does not tolerate waste. And so, if you're the kind of person that always wants to sneak off and not do their job, and you're lazy, you're not getting a job. And if you do get one,
Right.
you won't keep it very long. And number two, you've got to have integrity. You have got, think about this. What is insurance? It's a contractual promise to do something. If you don't keep promises, if you don't believe promises are important, what will you do when you have the checkbook? Will you what is your I cannot fix lazy and I cannot fix unethical. And I can
Mhm.
take somebody with a 2.0, and I've had students like that. They go on to have very successful careers. So to me, grades don't matter that much anymore. That's just me personally. I don't remember students by, oh, yeah, that was the A student and that was the C student. I don't, my memory doesn't work that way. I'm just like, they were my students. I love them. But lazy and unethical, this industry does not need you. So
Mhm.
if you're looking to get by and have an easy, cushy job, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's also important that you're emphasizing that ethics really is at the center of insurance, right? I don't know. I don't want to say that there's any misconceptions about that so much as I think just people hear the bad stories,
Hmm.
but like you said, all the good normal stories just don't make the news, and almost everybody's acting with integrity.
They don't make the news. And, know that the people who work in insurance are generally very good people. And ultimately, at their core, they like helping other people and they like building relationships, which is important, as I mentioned. But, I recall a student one time, many, many years ago, who went to, the student didn't graduate, okay? Made a bad grade in one class that they needed to graduate, and they didn't graduate. Well, I said, I'll call the company for you. I'll tell them, you made a mistake. You can retake the class and it'll be fine. Well, they didn't want me to
Mhm.
do that. Next thing I know,
Why
I
not?
find out, well, I'll tell you why. They just went and showed up for their job and said, "Oh yeah, I graduated. Here's my transcript.
Oh.
Ignore that grade. Dr. Wells is going to fix it for me." And had never said that. I couldn't do that. It was not in my class. It was in
Mhm.
somebody else's class. And they were really slick thinking they could get away with that. Well, I'll tell you what happened to them.
Mhm.
They got fired. As
Right.
soon as the company found out that they had not graduated, They got fired, and rightfully so. Playing games like that with your first job out of college is just stupid.
Yeah.
Just, it's really arrogant and it's really stupid.
Again, if it's a good place to work, they don't want you to be that kind of person anyway, right? Like they don't
Right.
want you to be an unethical person or someone that's kind of trying to go around the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I run across, and it's not often, but I do run across students sometimes who clearly don't have the integrity they need to have.
Mhm.
What can I do other than discourage them? Don't, unfortunately, at a university, you can't just say, hey, you're out of the program. You can do that at private schools and Ivy League schools and stuff like that. But I have taught a few in my career, and
Mhm.
not a lot, though. I've taught thousands of students, and I can name on one hand the ones that I remember as being problematic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. And before we wrap up today's episode, is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you feel like you want to make sure you said or that we talked about?
No, not really. I think we covered all the topics. It's fine with me if you give out my email address on the podcast in case anybody wants to reach out to me.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to just share it now?
Yeah, it's Wells BR, WELLS BR at ecu.edu.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been the Achievable FINRA and Insurance podcast, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Brenda Wells from ECU. And you can try out Achievable's FINRA and insurance courses for free by going to achievable.me.